Yes.
Okay. Oh, squeaky.
Squeaky Danny gets the wheel.
Usually.
Thanks for... Welcome to the show!
No one saw that coming. Yeah. This is the show where we say the same thing at the same time. Steven Samurai.
Welcome to the show, everyone. We're talking today about Steven Samurai, the official podcast. No, I'm going to start my intro over here. So this is beautiful. This is a good time. I'm here today. I need to just read what I've written here. Welcome to Cinema Lounge. It's the official podcast of The Great Scub Do, the YouTube channel we never touch. I'm Marshall, and as always, just kidding. Not as always. This is a special day.
My name is Ben.
This is Ben. I've got a third Ben now. I got tired of the second one, and now I'm getting a third Ben, and we're changing the name back to Ben and Marshall Do a Podcast, and we're not talking about movies ever again.
I like it.
I'm kidding. This is Danny.
Hi, guys.
Danny, who are you?
My name is Danny. Am I allowed to give shout-outs?
I guess. I don't know what that means exactly.
All right, I just want to give a shout-out to my friend Eric Keel. Because
number one fan of the pod.
He is the number one fan of the pod.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was thinking about you this morning, Eric, and that's about it.
That's good. Thank you. It's been a while since Eric has gotten a mention on the show.
Oh, that's good.
It used to be that he would just somehow come up on almost every single episode. Not even intentionally, it would just happen.
Well,
and
I knew that. I knew
he's
been lacking in the references, so I decided to make sure he was referenced today.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Well, we're planning to have him on the show soon.
See, yeah.
But you beat him to the punch.
That's why I was thinking about him, because I undeservedly am here before you, Eric. So
to watch Steven Samurai.
Because I love Steven. Any Steven. Any
Even
Samurai.
Steve from Blue's Clues.
Stephen Curry, the basketball player.
Stephen Curry. It's pretty great. So this is Danny. Just to get to the show. This is Danny. Danny's a good fellow. Known each other for a long time. What I didn't know about Danny is that he was also very much into movies and film and stuff like that.
Yes.
And you have a list of like everything you've ever watched.
Yeah, every movie I've ever seen, I've ranked from best to worst.
That is insane.
Yeah. So it could be a heated argument, but you know, at one point I decided I wanted to make it numerical and really get the perfect number for every movie.
Oh my gosh.
And, you know, I decided that it's just about the heart.
The cunning warrior attacks neither body nor mind.
Tell me how!
The heart, Osborne. First, we attack his heart.
You know, and I took that out, so now it's just my favorite. It's not necessarily what's best, but it's what I like the best.
Respect that.
Yeah.
So how do you rank them then? Because like when I'm looking at Letterboxd, I feel like 1 to 5 is so difficult for me because it compresses it so much, and then I feel like I end up giving Avatar the same rating as a movie that I think is actually good, and that bothers me.
See, that was a big reason I started this, because I was like, this can't be the same as this one.
Yeah.
So I have to, what's better?
Interesting.
And so what I do is I have every movie. Well, I've made my own little database at this point, but I start by ranking every movie with the year it came out. So say
Steven Samurai, 1954.
What's confusing with that one, because it came out in the U.S. in 1956, but it came out in Japan in 1954. I would have said 1954, but
I didn't know. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, so I figured it out because I thought it was 1954, and then on HBO Max, which I used to shout out HBO Max.
Yeah.
Is it
on Max right now?
It is. It said 1956, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But then I looked it up, and that was the news. released in America. So
that also makes more sense because the commentary that I was watching, the guy kept referring to 56. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But anywho, yeah, I take the year was whatever. I take all the movies from one year, which that year would not have a lot for me. But say last year, 2022, and I take all those movies and then I rank them my favorite from best to worst. This has no backing besides just I think this. I go individually. This movie I think is better than this movie, which I think is better than this movie, which I think is better than this movie. And then from there I go by decades, and I have a list of 10 movies that are number one for each year in that decade, and I compare all of them to each other and I say which one's my favorite, and then I compare the next one, which was my favorite, all the way down.
It's crazy
through that decade, and then I take each decade and compare them to each other, and then it makes the whole 1,000 movie long list.
That's insane.
Yeah,
I respect it. I wish I had a list like that.
Yeah,
but I don't, and I never will, because I'm not as special
meticulous
and cool as that too. That too. That's a good point. That's the way when I did my ranking the Marvel and DC and stuff like that episodes.
Yeah.
That's how I did it. Is I was like, is this better than the top one? Is it okay? No. Is it better than this one?
Yeah.
No. Is it like? And I would just kind of place it that way.
Yeah. You have to, because when I try to do a formula,
yeah,
I put out the formula, and then there'd be a movie. I'm like, no, that's
like
not
that doesn't belong
there.
there.
It's not better than the other one.
Yeah,
and so you really just
nothing
have
is better than Hotel Transylvania 3.
Summer Vacation.
Yes. Is that the one?
I think so.
I don't know. Did you know that those were directed by Genndy Tartakovsky?
I don't even know who that is.
That's the guy who did Samurai Jack and did like the Star Wars Clone Wars, the original animated 2D stuff. He directed those movies, apparently?
Yes. Yeah, I did know that.
So weird.
Just kidding.
So bizarre. I don't like it. But Danny, I invited you here because you're a big movie guy and because I like you.
Thank you.
Sometimes. To talk about, I almost said Steven, Seven Samurai. Steven Samurai. One of the greatest films of all time. Often hailed as one of the greatest films of all time. There's a large consensus that would say that it is the best Japanese film of all time. That's always a weird thing because obviously there's different techniques that weren't quite developed yet, and there's like different ways that Kurosawa would do things because of limitations of the era that could be done differently, and I don't know. It's a weird, like, people talking about Ocarina of Time as being the best video game of all time, and I would absolutely not ever choose that. But I think that in the case of this, it does genuinely have a really top spot there.
I feel like it depends on how you define greatest, because like how did it transform movie making past it is a different thing than maybe it was the best quality made movie of all time is a different story. Like they didn't have the resources that we have now.
Sure.
So
yeah, I'll hold your mic a little higher up.
Sorry guys, here you go.
Just made me a little concerned. It was drifting further and further away. But I don't know. I like it quite a bit. But we'll get to yes or no later. I mean, it's the idea behind this part of the show is not yes or no, but like that's whatever. So, Danny.
Yes.
On this show, which you've listened to before, we got our script, score, cinematography, performances, and directing, written by and directed by Akira Kurosawa, but he did not write it alone, as he did not write almost any of his movies alone. Only his earlier stuff, I think, that he write solo. He wrote this one and most of his other movies with these same guys, Shinobu Hashimoto and Hideo Oguni. They were his writing partners across a lot of different things, and they kind of filled different roles, with one of them being kind of like the soul behind the scripts, and one of them being like the person who had all the information about the era, and well, this would be wrong and this wouldn't make sense. And in this one in particular, I believe it was Kurosawa and Oguni who were doing the primary amount of the actual writing of the script, with Hashimoto doing the overall story. So they would be writing, they went to a hotel, like they would often, an inn in Japan, which is just like a gorgeous, they showed it in the documentary, it's just a very traditional looking, gorgeous, like, retreat. It's a beautiful, solitary place. And they just holed up there and would write, and this is the way they would often write, is to have the three of them around a table, writing individually, passing it to each other, and being like, this sucks, do something different here, this doesn't make sense, do something different here, this part's pretty good, I guess, and then just eventually finding a story and a script, which in this case was Kurosawa and Oguni passing it to Hashimoto, and then him saying, this doesn't fit the overall thing that we're trying to tell, that doesn't make sense, try again. They would joke a lot that he didn't do a single bit of writing on this one, but, you know.
Akira Kurosawa, you're saying?
Kurosawa and Oguni.
Yeah, okay.
Were like, he didn't even do it. Hashimoto didn't do anything. It's like, well, you know, he directed the story a lot, which is important. The score is by Fumio Hayasaka, who was Kurosawa's longest and dearest friend, apparently, and passed away like the next year.
Wow.
Did 4 more scores from his sickbed that year.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That is nuts.
Yeah. But I really love the score, and he does a great job. Cinematography was by Aka... no. Hair just flew off of my head. It's a long one. Whoa. The cinematography is Asakazu Nakai. Also great. I believe most of his things were also generally Kurosawa movies. Kurosawa kind of had his people, and those people didn't really go to other people, it seems like. Directed by Kurosawa, and then performances. There's a ton of really great performances in this movie, but the 2 leads are Toshiro Mifune and Takashi Shimura, who are also mainstays for Kurosawa, especially Mifune, who would go on to star in the grand majority of Kurosawa's work, and Takashi Shimura, who right before this was the star of Ikaru, which was last year remade as Living. He's really good. This is a very different character from that. It's like the polar opposite, but also very, very good. It was nominated in the Oscars for Best Art Direction, Set Direction, Black and White. I guess back then there was division between black and white and color, which is kind of cool to think about.
Yeah.
And Best Costume Design, Black and White. Synopsis of the movie. From IMDb, farmers from a village exploited by bandits hire a veteran samurai for protection who gathers 6 other samurai to join him. That is the basic most plot of this. The IMDb descriptions are kind of funny sometimes.
3.5 hours long would be something to that.
It's like, gosh, I think the Everything Everywhere All at Once, I read the description for that one from IMDb because that's always what I put here. And it was like, woman learns that she has to save the universe in a multiverse threat. And it's like, that is not what this movie is about at all. This is a mother-daughter movie, and it has like, the multiverse is kind of also there.
Yeah.
Like, the descriptions are kind of hilarious, the same way that Netflix descriptions are just terrible. If you read the descriptions or the synopsis of a movie that Netflix has in place, it's just nonsense, and it doesn't make any sense. So, that's the overall, statistics that we've got going here. Danny, what do you think about this movie?
Marshall?
Yes, Danny?
I think this is a movie that, surprisingly, even though it's 3.5 hours long, I'm like dying to see again. I saw it for the first time yesterday.
Yeah.
And I've never seen... I don't have an expansive history of watching foreign films. I've seen some, but I don't have a lot. So, besides, I think the Zack Snyder Justice League, this is probably the longest movie I've ever seen.
Really?
I don't know what else would be.
We gotta watch Ben-Hur.
Maybe Titanic is probably close to this. I don't know. I don't know what else is.
Ben-Hur is longer.
Hours.
Ben-Hur is about 4 hours long.
Jeez.
Lawrence of Arabia, I believe, is also about 4 hours long. Cleopatra, also in that realm. I mean, if we count the extended editions of Lord of the Rings, then but I don't know about that.
But I think for a movie in a different language, to have my attention for 3.5 hours,
and it really holds your attention,
is remarkable.
Yes.
I think that's a feat in itself for
Yeah.
me. Like I think we're in a generation that like we can't sit still for any amount of time. So to be able to watch a 3.5 hour movie and to never be bored, in black and white in a different language, that's pretty insane to me. So I already am like, I want to see it again because I feel like there's so many things I had to have missed.
We should watch it with the commentary.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, I mean, the guy that I was watching I watched it with, because I've seen it one time before, and then I watched it this time with commentary from Jared Heck, I think was his name, who's I'm probably getting that completely wrong, but he was a,
What the heck, man?
what the heck? He's probably still alive. I don't know why I'm saying was. He is or was, I hope you're still out there, Jared, a scholar. Yeah, I did. A scholar on Japanese cinema and on samurai films, I think specifically, or more specifically. And he had a lot of really interesting anecdotes, not just about the movie and the filmmaking, but also about Kurosawa and his life and his upbringing and everything, and what like led into certain choices in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like even just like the relationship between I'm gonna forget the name now. Mifune's character, Kikuchiyo, and yes, the relationship between Kikuchiyo and Yohei is apparently somewhat reminiscent of the relationship between Kurosawa's older brother and himself. And we can get real deep into that because his brother was very, very important in the formation of his childhood and of his life and getting into cinema and getting into film and stuff like that. But it was some really cool stuff. So we should watch the other commentary that I have not seen. Yeah, because I think that would get more into like the history of the era.
Yeah.
Which this does take place in the era that was the 1400s to 1600s, which was after the Civil War in Japan that led to there not really being an overall central power. So it was kind of just warlords reigning. There was no central daimyo. There was not like an overall emperor or a police lord or anything like that. It was, I'm in charge of this area, you're in charge of this area. Not even really the traditional clan system was super overtly there. So what you see, this takes place specifically in 1586. So towards the end of that time, you can see that like muskets have been introduced from Europe and everything like that. What you see is these wandering samurai, because after the Civil War and after all these conflicts, these houses did not really exist in the same way they used to. So these samurai that before were this warrior caste in this very caste-based system were without jobs, essentially. They didn't have a master, which is what Ronin, which is what they would be called, actually means, is like a masterless samurai is the idea. So they would just go from town to town, kind of like mercenaries a little bit, just looking for work. And that's where the initial idea for this movie came from, is that there were a few different ideas. One of them was a day in the life of a samurai, from waking up to doing this, and then storming a castle and making one small mistake, and then going back to their lord, and then being dishonored and having to commit harakiri, which is killing himself honorably. They didn't like that. They decided that didn't work. They couldn't find good historical reference for that because so much of the period pieces in this era were very based in like the kabuki kind of style, which is that very overly dramatic, theatrical, the really intense makeup and stuff, the stereotypical stuff that you would see in like old style theater, essentially, of Japan. And a lot of the period dramas were still very rooted in that. And Kurosawa wanted to make something extremely realistic and very accurate to what it would have actually been like. And they couldn't quite find the information for what they wanted for that. So then they moved to the idea of what if it was a series of major battles in the life of a samurai. And they very quickly were like, we're going to make a movie of a bunch of climaxes. Sounds boring, and we don't want to do that. And then, so they scrapped that. And then through their research, they found accounts of, in this time, apparently, if a samurai was wandering around, or when a samurai was wandering around, if he were to stop at a village and do like a night watch for them, they would provide a meal for him. So it was basically this very simple exchange of, you protect the village, we'll give you a meal, and you probably are going to move on the next day. And that was it. And that is when they thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. That could be the movie here. Because the idea of actually hiring a samurai, like peasants hiring a samurai, is extraordinary and makes no sense, because these are people who have nothing. There's a whole scene in the movie where they are talking, like one of the like manual laborers of that town in the beginning is talking to the samurai and saying, like, you see, while they're giving you this white rice, they're just over there eating millet.
Yeah.
Like, they're giving you literally physically everything they have.
Yeah.
And you really see the class breakdown there,
Yeah.
which is a huge theme in the movie.
Yeah.
The classism and
Yeah.
everything like that.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw this, even that I think I saw something that they couldn't even make movies. This is like about samurai
Yeah.
until just before this movie was made, because when Japan lost the war, the US kind of had this like list of like rules of like what they could have in movies, and they could not
Really?
have movies about samurai.
Interesting.
So I thought that was really fascinating, that this is like just right in the aftermath, like 10 years
Yeah.
after the war. So I don't remember when those rules were. They didn't say in this video I was watching. They didn't say when that was lifted, but I just thought that was fascinating.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole post-war era for Japan is really interesting, because you get a lot of these themes coming back, and there's a lot of like criticism of the class system and the way that these divisions are really intensely there. And that, I think, very much comes out of the intense nationalism of war, and then the kind of aversion to that after the fact. Especially because Kurosawa, like, definitely was somewhat left-leaning. He very much was like not interested in political action as a way to promote social solutions in problems and stuff, but you can see where his politics lie in this movie, and I just think that he's fantastic.
Yeah.
What do you think of this script overall? We'll talk about script and story.
Yeah. Well, again, I think, like I said, to have a 3.5 hour foreign language film, without it being boring, cause a lot of the script has to be awesome. And I think, I don't know much about the time period or the other scripts of Japanese movies at this time, but I think it was really enjoyable. I think the way they told, they let the story of the main story of the farmers and the samurai come out while also having humor and romance and all these other
there's
pieces
so many subplots
that like allow you to stay engaged and stay excited about what's going on amidst but it wasn't too distracting. Like, it kept the plot was still moving forward very well, without like but I just added to it, I feel like. So
I think every character very much has their own story arc.
Yeah.
Every one of the main samurai.
Well, that was even something I saw that is like a big piece of how this movie's affected cinema, and how they like I think it's like the gathering the team idea.
Yes, I love that scene.
Yeah, which they like gathered all of the samurai, and I think he was saying like so many movies have now adopted that, like whether that's Avengers or whatever, like how they have all of these, like they gather the team and they bring the plot points, or even Zack Snyder, when he was making his new Justice League, says that like Bruce Wayne, he like has a quote where he's saying how Bruce Wayne has to do this Seven Samurai gathering the team thing in the movie, which is just cool to see how they really do allow you to get to know. I think that's a benefit of the length of the movie, is that you get to know all the different samurai and all the different characters, and while the plot's still there. So,
and they all have very distinct personalities and very distinct characteristics to them. Like Shimura's character, Kanbei, the leader, the fearless leader of men, is so... I mean, he's just so cool. And none of these guys, except for Kyuzo, are really fantastic samurai. All of these guys are kind of lower rung, just pretty good at what they do. Other than Kyuzo, who is like master swordsman.
Yeah.
The best of all time. Incredible. He can't miss. The guy runs past him on the horse, the cavalry goes by, and you think he didn't get that guy. And then it follows that shot, and then the dude falls off the horse in the village. You're like, he did get that guy. And like all of these guys are somewhat rough around the edges.
Yeah.
But having Kanbei as their leader really brings them all together. And then you see the kind of social dynamics form between them as you get Katsushiro, who comes in, and you don't really know what his deal is at first. And then there's I think the peasants are like, we're out of food, what are we going to do? And he tosses them a few coins. And you're like, oh, okay. This is a rich kid. Like, he's here for the experience. He knows what he's getting. Well, he doesn't know what he's getting into, but he knows what he wants to do. He's not searching for glory necessarily, but he is searching for experience and trying to, like, I don't know, just go out on his own and prove himself. So he wants to follow Kanbei, and he wants to be his disciple and be taught by him. And then you get Gorobe, who comes in, who might be my favorite character besides Kukichio.
Yeah.
And he's like the chief of staff.
I think I'm the same there with you. I think those two. Well, Kichiyo, it's just Mifune's character is just
it's
so like so fun to watch.
Yes.
I think he brings an element that, like, I think him alone, honestly, I think kept me engaged more than just about anyone. Like,
yeah. Well, and that character almost didn't exist. They added that character late into the game.
Wow.
Because it was going to be, there would be Gorobe, who is like the very competent but jovial chief of staff, like the second in command. And then Kyuzo, they weren't super keen on at first because this scene where he fights this guy just kind of felt like a slaughter, which felt unfair. But you could tell that he was honorable, and he joins in. You get, I don't remember, Chichojiro, I think is the name of, something like that.
You're doing great with all these things.
I'm trying. Of Kanbei's old friend, who you immediately, the way they're sitting in that scene, and just like so casual in the way they talk to each other, you can tell that there's old history there, but they're not equals even at that point. Like Kanbei is still the leader here.
Yeah.
And that friendship there is immediately apparent, and that's awesome. Who do we have here? We have Kanbei, Katsushiro, Gorobe, Kyuzo.
There's one that starts with an H.
Oh,
it is.
Hayachi?
Something like that.
Yes, and he is found by Gorobe, and he is like splitting wood. And the guy in the commentary I was watching brought up a point that it didn't occur to me. Like, it's hard to split wood. Like, genuinely, it's difficult. And to do it in one single stroke perfectly, like he's doing every single time, that is a feat of strength, and that's impressive. But he also is that kind of jovial, light kind of presence that comes into the team. That's his very distinct role here. And in the meanwhile, you've got Kikuchio, who is just kind of in the background, like, I want to come with, guys, like, come on, I'm interested, I want to join in. You even get those shots of them walking to the village, and he's just kind of in the background. It's so far fun. A lot of horizon shots too. Like, Kurosawa really loves to have the horizon and like very dense, not dense, but very hard border lines between different things, which is very cool. But I love that whole team gathering scene, and the way that they all fill different roles, and the way that as they do start to get picked off kind of one by one, that really informs the way the story goes. Because the first one to die is the one that starts with an H, whose name that we can't remember exactly. And he's the jovial, happy one. And the reason they brought him on the team, they say, well, he's okay, but you kind of like bring some lightness to the group, you know, it'll be nice to have him around. And then losing him is heavy. And it's much more serious from then on out.
That's true.
And then it gets even more serious then after Kikuchiyo goes on his little adventure, which ultimately kind of brings down hellfire on the camp.
Yeah.
Incredible performance.
Yeah.
By everyone around.
Yeah.
Kikuchiyo's your favorite, you say?
Yeah.
Mifune?
Yeah.
Explain it.
Well, I just think he was just so fun to watch, I think. And I think he brought, for me, like, something about, I mean, I don't know if he's, like, the best. I mean, you're saying he became the star of all of Kurosawa's
He
films.
was, at the time, the highest paid actor in Japan.
Wow. Okay, so maybe, I mean, it might have just been how he did it, but I think for me, it felt like I could relate to him the most. I felt like he brought a personality that, like, I felt like I could grab onto, even though I know nothing about Japan. I know nothing about samurai or all these things. I think he brought something where I could attach myself to that. And then throughout the whole movie, like, he brought a perspective that felt like a perspective I would have. And so it was fun to like be watching it from his eyes sometimes. And I thought he just brought a lot of life to the movie, which was really enjoyable to watch. So,
well, he's the bridge between the samurai and the farmers.
Yeah.
Which is so vital. Because you even get in that early scene when they get to the village and Kanbei is trying to talk to them and they just are not responding. He then comes in and talks to them because he knows how to speak to farmers. Because we find out eventually he's not a samurai. Like, he was a farmer and he was born a farmer. And they, eventually accept him as a samurai. But he kind of creates that link between these two worlds. And there's that wonderful scene. I think maybe the best acting in the movie is Mifune in the scene where they find out that they've got this stockpile of samurai gear from samurai that some of these guys have killed. And he goes on this long rant of like, well, why do they fight against you? Because the samurai were pillaging and killing and raping at the same time. Like, you gonna blame them for doing what you were doing? And it's just really heavy, but that moment also brings the characters more close together and really solidifies everything for a few minutes. And then it gets rough again.
That's good. I feel like something I just loved in the whole thing, like, one thing I saw was, like, I don't know if this is jumping ahead, but like, the cinematography, I feel like was so cool with something that I was watching after I watched was, like, if you take you could take pause at any point in the movie and it would be a fascinating picture. And I just think, like, the attention to detail, and I think what I was reading was that this kind of introduced this double shot, like 2-camera shot idea, which I thought was really cool.
It was at least the first time that Kurosawa had done it.
But like something about it, like, people wanted to do it more often after what, because he did it because there were the battle scenes and they didn't have, it was too intense for them to be able to redo it and have exact, like, clear editing.
Get a match cut.
And so they decided we have to take 2 shots. And what I like about what Kurosawa did with that was he said, I'm gonna have my main camera and then second guy, film whatever you want.
Really?
And just do whatever, and then if I like any of your shots, I'll throw them in. And which I thought was really interesting, because I think people were struggling with the second camera because they were trying too hard to, like, manipulate it so that both shots would get exactly what they're looking for, and there was just too much that they couldn't control it. But they said how if you just had the one camera that you're trying to control and then let the other guy just do whatever, it opened up a lot more, that the director was like, so I think Kurosawa enjoyed doing that because you just never knew what you're gonna get, and you get another option. So
interesting. That's really fascinating coming from a guy who is so controlling and so specific. Like, the guy in the commentary would constantly be bringing up, like, everything is orchestrated by him. The weather, the wind, like the light in fully outdoor scenes and everything.
Did he build this whole village, right?
The whole village was built about 50 miles south of Tokyo, I believe. And it was an entire village. There were different parts of it that were in slightly different locations that they would shoot around to kind of make it look like it was one larger place. But the primary village and the cemetery were all fully built to look very accurate to the time period and everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's really cool. Like, you get that kind of... Spielberg has a lot of Kurosawa DNA in his work.
Yeah.
And, you know, Spielberg, Coppola, and George Lucas are the Katsushiros to Akira Kurosawa's Kanbei.
Yeah.
Like, they very much, like, worship at his feet. Mifune was George Lucas's first choice to play Old Ben Kenobi.
Really?
Yeah, and he was thinking about doing it, but he didn't want to travel.
Yeah.
And he was, I think, retired at that point. But there's been some really good paintings done of Mifune as Obi-Wan, and like, man, it's so cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
We should talk about some of the, like, I feel like that's something I've been really enjoying after watching, is I didn't realize how much of the legacy of like Kurosawa, of Seven Samurai specifically. Like, I think it was fun even how much Star Wars. I don't know a lot about Star Wars, but I've seen all the movies. But like, I think how much those are, like, especially the first one was like a direct, like, this is from Seven Samurai.
It's like people call it a space western, but really westerns in America in the 50s were very much inspired by samurai pictures from Japan, especially spaghetti westerns. So, I mean, you get an extremely direct line between Seven Samurai and Magnificent Seven because it is literally the same movie.
Yeah.
That was the big deal with Yojimbo, is that they made Fistful of Dollars, Clint Eastwood movie, classic, all time, kind of created or popularized the spaghetti western genre. And Kurosawa went to see it and came out of that movie and he was like, hold on a second. I made this movie because it is a direct ripoff of Yojimbo. So he sent a letter to Sergio Leone, and very famously it was it said something to the effect of, I've just come out of your movie, A Fistful of Dollars. It was a delightful film. However, it was my film. And there was all kinds of legal action around that. But meanwhile, Leone's just running around town being like, I got a letter from Akira Kurosawa. Which is hilarious. So that's why then when you watch The Magnificent Seven, with Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen and James Coburn and all of these stars of American Hollywood in the 50s and early 60s, that they give direct credit to based on Seven Samurai by Akira Kurosawa. Because like that created a precedent. And that's been redone a couple times now. There's been multiple kind of remakes of specifically Seven Samurai. There's a Bruce Willis comedy that is basically just Seven Samurai. Or no, it's Yojimbo.
Okay.
There's a Yojimbo that's like gangster movie. It's really weird. The Three Amigos, the Chevy Chase, Steve Martin Short movie is a comedy take on the Seven Samurai. It's a hilarious movie. There's two versions of The Magnificent Seven. The more recent one with Denzel and Chris Pratt, and the original with the actors that I just named. But the influences are numerous. I mean, I started out talking about Spielberg, and I think one of the things that he takes most directly from Kurosawa is the staging of scenes and the blocking of characters and the way that his characters move around in a scene is very, very intentional. Like, everything is very specifically choreographed, and it works with the camera, it moves with the camera. It's more like the camera is following the scene than the person is like, I need to be in this spot for the camera and then I need to be this spot. Like, no, like the scene is happening and then we're getting the view from the camera. Like, we would see multiple times really interesting shots in this movie of like, there's action happening and people are going around these large areas and everything and through a building, and you would see through the kind of slats in the building, like Kuhichio taking down the bandit leader and running and following people and everything, just in a very unique way that you don't usually see.
Yeah.
And it kind of creates this like we're obviously watching the movie, but it creates this sensation of I'm standing here and I'm watching this happen as this guy is going from here to there.
Yeah.
In a very unique way that you just don't see in other places, except for in like a Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
And the way that he stages characters and blocks characters and creates depth in his scenes with the way characters are there, and everyone is placed perfectly and you can see everyone's face and everyone's reaction. And the more reactions at a time means that there's a bigger emotion happening, and that very exaggerated acting.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy the amount, like, for me to hear all the influences, like, you just think of all the, like, major directors and major movies, like, the amount of influence this movie and this director, like, had on the future of American filmmaking is absurd. Like you said, Spielberg and George Lucas, and I even heard of, like, some Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola, and even, like, hearing you say Sergio Leone, it's really interesting for me because even like Quentin Tarantino would say Sergio Leone is like his main influence. So like you just think the ripple effect of all of, and these people are coming back to Kurosawa, and I think that's just a fun, like, just crazy how much influence one person can have on the history. Like if he wasn't there, I imagine movies. Imagine America today without Star Wars, or without like
it's impossible.
Like all these cultural things that have affected America for 60 years, 70, whatever. Like come a lot, and thanks to this movie, thanks to this director, which is, I think that's a big reason why I see why it's like so high on movie lists of what movies are so important or best or whatever. So
it's really him and John Ford. Are like the two all-time greats. And there's, directors before that and everything, but these are the two guys that really kind of took the medium and were figuring out, like, what can we do with this? Because that's one of the things we talked about with on our All Quiet episode, because I watched the old movie and the new movie. Ben watched the new movie. And, you watched the old movie with me. And I think we talked a little bit in that when we watched it about how, like, it was like 1933, I think, or 1930 when the movie came out. Movies are so new at that point. And they're just figuring out what makes movies work and what makes this medium distinct from this medium. Like, why it's the same thing with trying to adapt a video game into a movie or a TV show, and we're just finally figuring that out. Like, there are things that make this thing work that this other thing doesn't have. Which is why older movies like All Quiet tend to have a more drawn out, longer feel, more like a play, because that's the closest analog that they have. And you can just do different things in a film than you are able to do in a play. You're more capable of taking the camera in this specific place and getting a close-up on this guy that you can't get if you're sitting in the mezzanine in a theater watching an actor from 100 feet away. Like, it's so interesting. And this is 30, 20 years on from that, generally. 20-ish years, 24.
24,
And you can see just all of the growth in between those two movies alone is fascinating.
I mean, well, All Quiet, that was like 3 years after the first non-silent movie even came out. Like, which
bizarre.
I think is like, when I watched that with you again, was like why I was so amazed by that movie, because it's like the things they were able to do. And that's what, like, it's what's so fun about watching old movies, because if you watch an old movie with the lens of 2023, you're like, this movie's okay. Or this movie, but like, to think about what hoops they had to jump through, what, like, new technology, what all these things that they had, like, they're innovators. Like,
there were no computers.
It's amazing.
I mean, even just going back to The Phantom Menace in 1999, I think being the first movie to ever be shot completely on digital. Or no, Attack the Clones. Like, that's crazy. because that's just the world we live in. But it wasn't until 2002
Yeah.
that a movie was fully done on digital cameras.
Yeah.
Like, the growth is slowed down in a lot of ways. It was very exponential, but there's still these just leaps in technology that are fascinating.
Yeah.
So cool. Let's see what notes I have here. We're at 45. That's a pretty solid time. What other interesting things do I have? It's interesting, like, some people would look at the acting in these movies and think of it as bad acting or ridiculous or over the top, but I think it very much fits what they're trying to do. And I think it's weird I take that back. I think that you would watch this movie and you wouldn't really think that it's over the top. But if you place these performances in anything else, it seems ridiculous. And I think that these performances, the largeness of these performances, very much matches the beauty of the frames that they're set in, and the largeness of the story that they're set in. Like, it's proportional to itself in a way that, like, there's a lot of influence in other directors and everything, and but if you took one of these performances and put it into a Spielberg movie, it would feel over the top, and it would feel ridiculous. Where in this, sometimes you get a lot of subtlety by an actor doing what a modern actor would call a little bit outrageous, but compared to the level of intensity that they have some of the time, it feels more subtle. I think that's pretty sweet. The hair was a big indicator of status to a certain degree, which is why at the beginning of the movie, when they cut his top knot, Kanbei's top knot off, all of these guys are watching in horror. They're like, what the heck? Because it's interesting because it shows two things. What the Jared heck? Oh my gosh, what the Jared heck? It shows kind of two things at once. That it shows his dedication to saving this child and doing whatever it takes and not worrying about class difference necessarily. But it also shows what kind of social class he's in, that if he was some very high level samurai, he would not do that. Because that means something. Apparently it has something to do with, like, more practically how, like, it makes your helmet fit better or something. I don't know. That's why everyone has the weird shaved with the top knot. I don't know. But it shows primarily, like, he isn't in this super high class, but also he's going to do whatever he's got to do to make this work and to make it happen. And that's really cool. And you kind of get a similar thing then when Shino's father cuts her hair. It's this similar kind of, like, it's equally as important to her as that hair for Kanbei is for the people around him, the perception of him. Because only monks would shave their head. Which is the point of why he did that, is because he was trying to pose as a monk and everything. Which is pretty sweet. Mifune is a beast. Just, like, visually, the way he moves and acts. The music is really good. It was scored for $1,000, which was a lot at the time, apparently.
I'm still amazed that you said what's his face that did the score?
Yeah, what's his name? Fumio Hayasaka. I'm amazed that he did. You said 10 scores from his. 4 more.
4 scores from his deathbed. I just, like, from a musical perspective, where I am and having done music and tried to do some film scoring with what we have today, I can't imagine, like, they didn't have any way to do, like,
he would have to just be writing.
It would have to be all in his head. Like, you can't, like, he doesn't have a way to play unless he had all these instruments next to him in his death. Like, I'm amazed, like,
he's like Amadeus in Amadeus.
Like, how much you have to know to be able to create emotion, create, like, all of this in that, like,
figure out how these tiny disparate parts work together.
It's just incredible to me. So that's a tangent, but really cool.
Everything's a tangent on a podcast. So Kikuchio is somewhat inspired by Kurosawa's brother, the way that he gets after Yohei all the time, being how his brother would get on him. He introduced him to film and art house cinema and stuff like that, and would often... He was more the pessimist, while Kurosawa was much more the optimist, and there was a point where they, like... Jared what the heck told a story about how they went out after a bombing to just look around, I guess, and saw things that were just kind of horrific and awful, and one of which was just a pile of bodies as tall as them. And his brother just brought up like it's obviously it's horrific and terrible, but in a weird way it's also filmically like beautiful and magnificent, I think is the word that he said. And Kurosawa recognized that and was like, yeah, it kind of is, like in a weird kind of awful twisted way. And he was that pessimistic side of things, and he would often apparently talk about how he didn't want to live past 30 because that's when people get old and bitter and ugly. And no one ever took him seriously. And then I believe it was on when he was 28, he took his own life.
Kurosawa?
No, his brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Kurosawa was 23 at the time, I think, or something like that.
How old was Kurosawa when he made this movie? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. 4,000.
Okay.
He wasn't 4,000.
Well, I just was thinking if he was in his 20s, I'd be amazed if he was.
Probably later than that.
Yeah.
Because he was already fairly well established at this point.
Yeah.
He'd already done Stray Dog, Drunken Angel, Ikaru, Rashomon.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much. Rashomon was probably the most notable at this point. That was kind of his big break. He had done other stuff before that, but Rashomon was like the big thing.
Which is, that one still is one of the highest regarded movies
I don't know, I need to watch Rashomon.
I haven't seen it, but
we should watch it.
We should
watch all of his movies right now.
Okay, bye guys. We're gonna go watch
every Kurosawa movie. And we're gonna watch them in reverse
in a couple weeks.
That's what
in
I'm
reverse.
saying. Yep.
like from the end of the movie to the beginning of the movie.
So like the last scene first, and the second to last scene second, and the third to last scene fourth. Tricked you.
Oh.
And the fourth to last scene third.
You know, that's a good idea. You guys hear this thing fall? We forgot to pull this out.
It's a sword. Watch out. Kukichio's sword.
Kukichio.
Yep. Is about 5 feet long. It's almost as tall as Mifune.
5 feet long?
Yeah. I mean, he's holding it over his shoulder,
Yeah.
this massive thing.
Wow.
Which, you know, a little bit of compensation, maybe trying to show off, fits the character very well.
Sure.
There were no stuntmen at this time. There was no stuntman guild. So, you know, when you see Mifune standing off against charging cavalry, that is actually the highest paid actor in Japan, standing in front of charging horses.
Wow.
Craziness.
Yeah.
Swinging wildly with that sword and everything.
Cool.
Absolutely insane. The falls they would take all the time. There's a story in the Criterion thing from an interview that Mifune did, where he talked about various things, but one thing was kind of funny to me, where he talked about the horse riding they had to do. And he said, I didn't learn to ride for this film. I'd started picking it up earlier, just outside of a place called Seijo, where there was a stable. I talked to Shimura, Chiaki, and some others into coming along with me. Shimura kept saying that he was too old for horseback riding and wanted to quit, but I tricked him into thinking that it was good for his health. In the end, we all became pretty good horsemen. Like, that's pretty funny.
That's funny. And that's funny that he like let out on that, because isn't he the one that they were kind of making fun of his horseback riding in the movie? Yeah, like he's like, I'm gonna go take Yohei's horse or whatever, and then he gets on it and then falls off or whatever.
Yeah, there's that great sight gag where he goes across and then you can't see him, and then the horse goes
and he's not there anymore.
Like,
and then he's chasing it. It's a broken leg or whatever. Yeah,
it's so good. Big fan. Do I have any other important notes here? Do you have any other important notes, Danny?
Go watch Steven Samurai.
I agree. Go watch Steven Samurai. I've got random bits and bobs here, but nothing wildly interesting or wildly important. I think this is a great movie.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed watching it. I think I enjoyed it more the second time than the first time.
That's what I feel like it's gonna happen to me.
Yeah. I really was struck more by the dynamics between the characters and the classes and their individual stories. I was struck by that a lot more the second time than the first time.
Was this your second time?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Because there's just so much to take in.
Yeah.
Like there is, and it doesn't feel overstuffed, but it is hard to really absorb every individual, like the coming of age story for Katsushiro or Kanbei, and like trying to be this leader, but then in the end, kind of feeling in somewhat kind of a defeat of like, well, they're off and happy, but they've already forgotten about us. Like there's no thanks for us. There's just our 4 dead comrades up here, and we're basically as good as with them.
Yeah, that's a big thing we forgot to mention. That last and
gorgeous shot.
Is that spoiling? Can we have spoilers?
No, I mean, I think for this show, the review show, we specifically say, oh, it's spoiler time.
Okay.
For Full Size Lounge.
Yeah. But yeah, that end scene where it's
I think that his old friend is named Chichihiro.
Okay. And Kanbei?
Chichihiro, Kanbei, and Katsum.
And he was out in the field or whatever, but it's just them two. And I don't know.
And the kid.
Kanbei says, like, we didn't win. Again, we didn't win because we lost everybody and they're now happy. Like, that's such an interesting...
Well, even in that final moment of the final battle where, like, the rain is just blasting down on them, and it's just Katsushiro... Chichihiro and Kanbei, and he's just like, Katsushiro has just had his first kill, the first time he's ever killed someone. It's this coming of age story for him, where he meets this girl and everything and has this kill. He kills this guy and realizes it's not what he wants to do and not what he really thought it would be, and there's that moment where it's just the 3 of them and they just look horrifically tired, and Kanbei says, once more we survive. And it doesn't feel like a victory statement. Yeah. It feels more like, why is it us? Yeah. Like all of this hell that's been rained down, not intentionally by Kuchichio, after, trying to show off a little bit, all of the bandits come in, and that's when it gets really serious, and Yohei has died, and he goes intense on all these guys, and it just it goes from being like kind of jovial action film a little bit to being much more serious and much more dark and kind of like just brutal. Yeah. And that final statement of once more we survive, like I said, like it really does not feel like he's not saying we did it. Yeah. It is, we're all that's left. Yeah. Just like every other time, all of our friends are dead. Yeah. And you and me are still here. Yeah. And that's heavy. Yeah. And I hope that I never understand how that feels. Because, man, that would suck. Yeah. But it's just, I don't know. I think the ending is interesting because you do get this kind of, not rejection of the samurai, but just this disinterest once the service has been rendered. All right, thank you. Yeah. Or not even thank you. Like, they're just back to work. Yeah. Everything's fine now. Yeah. And we did it. Yeah. We fixed it, and it's good. And the samurai are time to go. Yeah. And that's so interesting to me. In the Magnificent Seven, the young boy goes and stays in the village with the girl. In this, much more realistically, he realizes that he can't really do that. He's now bound to these guys. He is a samurai now. Yeah. Like, he's in this world whether he wants to be or not. Yeah. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. It's good.
I say we become samurais. Ching! Oh, now I am the one with the sword.
Katsushiro, you are now a samurai.
Crap. Dang it.
What the Jared heck?
What the Jared heck. Well, Danny.
Thank you, Marshall.
Steven Samurai, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Can't, dang it. Oh.
I'm glad. I'll cut all that out.
Okay.
This is the time of the show where we talk about if this, then that. And there's really not anything to suggest other than just watch every Kurosawa movie. Especially his samurai stuff. Yojimbo's fantastic. The Hidden Fortress is really good. Throne of Blood, I believe, is a adaptation of... not Hamlet. Something. Macbeth, I think.
I was told once you're done watching Steven Samurai to watch A Bug's Life.
Oh, yeah, A Bug's Life is also the same thing.
So do that. That's what I want to do. I want to go
Okay.
watch A Bug's Life again. So
We're going to be a beautiful butterfly.
Okay, Heimlich.
Heimlich.
Isn't that his name? I think that's his name, Heimlich.
That'd be funny if it was. I can't remember.
I think the caterpillar is a Heimlich.
I hope so. Yeah, everyone, just watch all the movies. Watch all the good stuff. It's all good stuff. You should check it out. It's good movies. It's good times. Thank you for listening. If you want to check out the show, you can check out the show all over the place. If you want to check us out on Instagram, you could go to Cinema Lounge Pod on Instagram. You could say it on Facebook. You could do other things. I don't know.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to say, Danny?
I'm just fortunate to be here.
You can listen to Danny's music.
Yeah, you can find me on Spotify at Danny Peterson. And other than that, I'm just happy to be here. Thanks, Marshall.
Well, Danny, it's fine.
Yeah, Steven and I are gonna hang out later. So if you
Run off
want to
into the
come,
sunset and
yeah. Now that we've
give a little kiss.
won our battle, and
Did we win the battle?
did we? The farmers did, but the samurai may not have. You may never
Are we
know.
the farmers or are we the samurai? This and
Find
more
out next episode.
next week on Cinema Lounge. Okay, this has been the show. I've been Marshall.
I've been Danny.
Doesn't sound as good as I've been Ben.
I've been Ben. I have been Ben.
For today.
Oh,
we have to toast. You have to do a toast.
my name is Ben, and I'm grateful to be here, Marshall. That's my toast.
That's your toast? Oh my gosh. My turn, I guess. Here's to the samurai who fell.
And the farmers who
Smell. Dink it.
Yummy.
Sink it.
I don't know how you drink so much more water than me.
I really like water.
I feel like I was drinking the whole time.
Don't drink and drive. Thanks everyone for listening to
All
the show.
right,
I've
thank
been Marshall.
you. I've been Ben.